In this video, we are going to create a Power Automate Cloud Flow that will create a case in Salesforce when a new channel message in Teams is added. So we're in Power Automate, and we've selected to build an automated cloud flow, and we're just going to call this create case from Teams post. And the trigger that we want is the Teams connector when a new channel message is added. So the first thing we do is set up our trigger. So we choose our team and then our channel. So the first thing that we'll do is our Salesforce create record. Usually you can find it by searching Salesforce, and then create record is the top one. And the record we're going to create is a case. So the Salesforce object type is going to be cases. And we're going to need to populate a number of our case fields. So the first one that I want is case origin. And I choose case origin from our drop-down menu. And the next one is our summary. Now the summary, I'm going to call it, the name of the channel is Ask Training. And I'm going to always have those cases created with Ask Training case. And then we'll use the dynamic content from our trigger. And that's going to be the message subject. So the person is required to have a subject on their post, and that will be the summary. Appears as case summary, Ask Training, case dash, whatever their message subject is. So that creates this static variable and then this unique variable for every summary that's created. We can therefore utilize that in future flows by pulling from the case summary. Now I need a few more things. So one thing I need is the case details. Now the case details is something I'm not going to populate at this moment. Just gonna put it in an X, and I'm gonna show you what we're gonna do with the case details in a second. I need to just put in a few more. So while I do this, I'll just skip the video ahead to where this part is completed. So now we've got everything set up as we want it. And this could essentially conclude your flow. Literally these two actions. The message comes in, it takes the body of the message, which we would populate in the details section here, and then the message subject, which we're using for the summary. And of course, anything else that you want to grab, such as who created the post. But we're going to flesh this out a little bit more, because what we want to do is we want Power Automate to evaluate the message body and make a determination on what category to classify this case. So by category, I'm referring to a value called the LR subject. It'll be the subject of the case. And that categorizes the case. So in order to do that, we need to put in a few more actions. So we're going to insert an action here. And this very first one that we need is HTML to text. This is the content conversion action that we want. And the value here is going to be the dynamic content of our trigger. That would be the content of the message, right? We're going to we're going to convert that to text. And that way we can pass it to our next action, which is going to be AI builder action. And we're going to use the create text with GPT using a prompt. I'm going to use this one. And now I already have a prompt built out for this, but I'm going to go ahead and just do, I'm going to go ahead and select that, and then I'm going to edit it. That way you can see what exactly I did to create this. So the prompt is very simple. It's just analyze this text and categorize the text into one of the following categories. And then these categories are the case subjects in Salesforce. So we have some custom ones in our instance. So one is subscription, and then another is registration, certificates, and then there's an other category. And then I also included this line, provide only the category in the response. So the response will generate literally just the category. Now, we also need to set up the input. So if you click on the input over here, and then you'll put in the name, which is text, and then just a line of sample data. And then what we can do is test that prompt. And it gave us the response of other. And it's typically just based on as simple as like customers having issues with their labs versus if we change this to subscriptions and you help them. So it's literally just going based on keywords that it's finding, which is totally fine. That's all that we needed to do. It's just an easier way of doing this than, using conditions or etc. It's a kind of a shortcut, you could say. So, you can test this out with different things, with certifications, test it again. And it's pretty much always going to give you what it needs. Now we're going to save this prompt. And this is the prompt that we're going to use in our flow. And we do have to put in the dynamic content, the output of our HTML to text here. And that's going to be the text that will essentially analyze. And that's going to set up our ability to create our next action, which is a simple compose action. And what we're composing is the case details. So as you recall, in our create record case, we left the details blank. And the reason for that is because we're going to compose those details in a compose action, pass that to this action here, because we're going to create multiple conditions to update that Salesforce case with the appropriate subject. And the reason that I have to do that is because when I create the record, there's automation on the Salesforce side. That is, anytime a case is created, it's defaulting the subject of that case to a particular value. And the way around that, because we can't just create the case with the subject selected, the way around that is to create some conditions. And rather than having to copy and paste the details into every action, we just create one action here, which is our compose. And that way we can just pass that compose outputs into each of those subsequent condition actions. So I already have my HTML written. So I'm just going to paste that in here. So this accepts compose accepts the HTML, which is great because Salesforce Case will recognize that HTML and you can create links that way, which makes it much easier to work with. So one thing that I just need to do since I pasted this in here is update the dynamic content. So the post created by That's going to be the dynamic content here of the person or message from user display name. And then also here is the plain text. So this is going to be the outputs of our HTML to text. So that's the details, but basically that's the body of the team's post. Okay, now we've got that done, and we're going to use the outputs of the compose there. Great. Now there's just one last thing to do, which is set up our, well, there's not one last thing to do. There's one more action we're going to do after our condition. So we're only going to, for the sake of the length of this video, we're only going to create one condition just to see, just so I can show you what I'm doing exactly. So I'm going to search condition, and then this condition, the expression is going to be the response text here, and then is equal to, and then we literally just write in the Salesforce case subject. So that would be, in this case, subscriptions. And so if it's equal to subscriptions, I'm not going to have it do anything, because the record, when it gets created, it defaults to subscriptions. But if it's not equal to subscriptions, then we add in our next condition. And that's again going to be text from here, and then is equal to, and then registrations. Now it's going to check if it's equal to registrations. And we're going to update this so that we can see this is the one that checks for if it's registrations, and this is the one that checks for if it's subscriptions, which it does nothing in that case. But if it is registrations, if it's equal to that, then this is where we add in our Salesforce connector, which is update record, and then we choose cases. And then our record ID is going to be dynamic content from create record case, and that's case ID. And then here I will also modify the title of this action so that I know this is the one working with registrations. Now this is where I would continue to add more conditions for the sake of it. So we would have like 4 more, because if you remember when we set up our prompt, we set it up to categorize into 4 categories. So we would need 2 more conditions. But just for this tutorial, we're going to close out our flow by adding another action. This one is going to be reply with a message in a channel. So the purpose for ending the flow with this action is going to reply back to the person that posted with a little message. Thank you for posting. And the second reason is because we're setting up for our next flow, which is going to give us the ability to close the case that was created here from Teams. And so what we want to do is have the message include the case ID, because that's going to be the thing that will connect us back to our case that was created from this flow for our next flow. So we click see more, and then the one that we want is reply with a message in a channel. And then we select user, channel, message ID is the message ID from our trigger. Select our team and our channel. we put in our message here. HTML here. So I'm going to put HTML. I'm going to switch to HTML and write the HTML here. So this is where we address to the person that created the post. So again, we're choosing the user display name. And then the message is, thank you for posting. A team member will reply to your message shortly. And then I'm also having some link here to an FAQ, but for the sake of this, I'm just going to delete that. And then this is where I'm putting in a training case has been created from your request, and then the case ID, and then the case ID here is the dynamic content. And so what we want to search for is actually case number from the create record action. And then we also have a link. So here's the link to the case ID, I believe. So let's grab the case ID. There we go. And how that looks like, if you could toggle back here, you can see what it will look like. So this is a link. The case number becomes a link. The case ID here is not a link, but it's like that so that in our next flow, the workflow is that the person closing the case will copy this number and then paste it into a reply, and that will close the case. So that's going to be in our next video. So last thing to do is save and test. So we save this, and then we hop over to Teams, and then we add our subject. So I'm just going to put the subject as test, the body as, well, we're going to actually test this flow appropriately. So we only set up 2 conditions, one for subscriptions, one for registrations. Since it always defaults to subscriptions, I want to make sure that the update record action works. So I'm going to say, I need help with registration. And that's it. So now I post here. And typically when you're, one more thing is you're always going to get this flow checker error operation warning anytime you use an AI builder action, because they want you to put a content approval action after it. But this is again a flow that doesn't need one, because what it's doing is so basic. All it's doing is categorizing, and if it doesn't get it 100, if it doesn't get it right 100% of the time, that's not an issue at all for what we're trying to do. So typically it takes a while for the flow to run, a while being maybe like 2 minutes for it to trigger. But we'll wait here, we'll refresh, and then we will take a look at the case it created. Okay, so our flow ran, and we know that it was successful because it reached the final action, which is to reply to my post. Here's the reply, and then here's our link to hop right to the case. Here's the case that it created. And then if we scroll down, we can see here is the details, and here is some of the extra things that I included in the details in that compose action. So it includes who created the post, their message here, and here's the subject of the message, which just became the summary. And the summary was followed by preceded by Ask Training Case, and then it created a link to the Ask Training channel, so we can hop right over there. And then it also mentioned how this case was created, which was our Automate Cloudflow, and then it takes us, this is a link that takes us right to the Cloudflow page. And so that's going to do it for this video. I hope that you found this tutorial useful, something you can possibly implement in your workflows. as always, appreciate everyone who watches, and I will look forward to sharing part 2 of this workflow, which is how to close the case from Teams so that you don't even have to go into Salesforce to close the case. You can communicate everything through the Teams channel. You can get the resolution, give the resolution there, and from there, close the case. Okay, we'll see you. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. What?